are packed with betrayal, danger, and emotional fallout. The young and the restless spoilers reveal that Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott, and Victoria Newman, Amelia Hindley, will have to decide whether they're going to tell Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, a huge secret. Nikki won't want Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, knowing she has a brain mass that could lead to blindness, but the situation with Nick is a little trickier. Since Nick's recovery is in a fragile place, Nikki will have the thought of doing anything to jeopardize it. At the same time, Nikki may realize lying to Nick would just make things worse and would mean avoiding the inevitable. Nick's going to find out anyway, so Nikki may choose to confess to him. If not, it could be Victoria who reveals the MRI results and the risky surgery that could cost Nikki her sight. Regardless, this horrible Nikki news could be what sends Nick over the edge on June 24th. YNR spoilers say that's when Nick will head down a tempting road that could lead to disaster if he lets it. Since Nick will indeed be tempted, it sounds like he may contact a drug dealer again and score more fentanyl. Then again, maybe Nick has secretly been holding on to some fentanyl from before he started his recovery. Either way, Nick will struggle with his emotions and will once again feel helpless when it comes to protecting his family. That's been a big thing for Nick, so his despair could leave him popping pills once more. Of course, it's also possible Nick will manage to pull himself together in the end. Although Nick will hate what Nikki is going through, he may realize he'd feel even worse if he surrendered to drugs and devastated Nikki even further. The last thing Nikki needs right now is to worry about Nick and whether he might overdose again. That could motivate Nick to put the drug bag down in the end and stay on the right path. The young and the restless spoilers say Nick's recovery will be derailed by the temptation that's brewing, but we'll see if he actually takes the drugs or not. From my perspective, this episode feels like a turning point for multiple families. Nick's drug deal follows horrible news, recovery derailed in a big way. The late afternoon sun poured through the windows of crimson lights, but for Nick Newman, the warmth of the day felt completely out of reach. He sat alone at a corner table, staring into a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The devastating news he had received only hours earlier continued to replay in his mind. Nikki Newman was getting worse. Much worse. The doctors had tried to remain optimistic, but the newest test results painted a terrifying picture. The treatment wasn't working as expected, and the complications were becoming more serious with every passing day. Nick had always believed his mother could survive anything. She had survived addiction. She had survived kidnappings. She had survived marriages to Victor Newman. But now? For the first time in years, Nick was genuinely afraid. The possibility of losing Nikki felt painfully real. The coffee shop door opened. Sharon walked inside. One glance at Nick told her everything she needed to know. "Bad news?" she asked quietly. Nick laughed bitterly. "When isn't it?" Sharon sat down across from him. For several moments neither spoke. Finally Nick broke the silence. "The doctors don't know what comes next." Sharon's face fell. "Oh, Nick. They keep talking about new treatments. Experimental options. More tests. More waiting." His voice cracked. "And none of them can promise she'll be okay." Sharon reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your mother is strong. Strong doesn't always win." The words shocked even Nick himself. Sharon could hear the fear underneath them. The hopelessness. And that scared her. Because Nick Newman wasn't someone who gave up easily. Yet today he looked dangerously close. Meanwhile, at Newman Ranch, Victor paced the living room like a caged lion. The great Victor Newman had spent decades controlling every situation imaginable. Business wars. Family crises. Corporate takeovers. But illness was different. Money couldn't solve everything. Power couldn't intimidate disease. And Victor hated feeling powerless. Adam entered the room. "Dad." Victor stopped pacing. "What?" "The security team found something." Victor frowned. What now? Adam hesitated. It's Nick. Immediately Victor's expression darkened. What about him? He's been making calls. Victor narrowed his eyes. To whom? Adam handed over a report. Victor quickly scanned the information. His jaw tightened. Then tightened further. By the time he reached the last page, rage burned in his eyes. Damn it. Adam immediately understood. Nick was headed toward trouble. Big trouble. Across town, Nick sat alone in his car. Night had fallen. Rain pounded against the windshield. His phone buzzed. A text message. The sender wasn't listed by name. Only a number. Nick stared at it. Then opened the message. 3 simple words. I can help. Anyone else might have ignored it. But Nick knew exactly who had sent it. And exactly what kind of help they meant. Several weeks earlier, during one of Nikki's medical setbacks, Nick had crossed paths with a man connected to underground pharmaceutical suppliers. At the time, Nick had dismissed the conversation. Now? Everything felt different. Desperation changed people. Fear changed people. The possibility of losing someone you loved changed everything. Nick typed a response. We need to talk. He hit send. Then immediately regretted it. But it was already done. The following evening, Nick arrived at an abandoned warehouse near the outskirts of Genoa City. The location alone should have convinced him to leave. Instead, he stepped inside. A figure emerged from the shadows. Mr. Newman. Nick folded his arms. What do you have? The man smiled. Straight to business. My mother doesn't have much time. The stranger nodded. I understand. He opened a briefcase. Inside were several small containers. No labels. No official markings. No verification. Nothing. Nick stared. What is this? A treatment. That's not an answer. It has helped patients with similar conditions. Nick looked skeptical. According to who? The man shrugged. People who matter. Nick knew this was insane. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away. Yet the thought of Nikki dying was even worse. If there's a chance this works. There is. The stranger leaned forward. A very good chance. Nick wanted to believe him. Desperately. Maybe too desperately. At Newman Enterprises, Adam met privately with Victor. He's actually considering it. Victor slammed a hand onto the desk. Unbelievable. We need to stop him. Victor nodded. Immediately. Adam looked concerned. If this treatment is illegal. It is. And if Nick gets involved. He could destroy himself. Victor finished the sentence. Neither man needed to discuss the consequences. They both knew. Nick wasn't thinking rationally. He was grieving. Panicked. Terrified. Exactly the kind of emotional state that predators exploited. Elsewhere, Sharon received an unexpected visitor. It was Nate. And he looked troubled. What's wrong? Sharon asked. Nate sighed heavily. I heard something. What? Nick. Immediately Sharon became concerned. What about him? Nate hesitated. Then delivered the shocking information. Someone claims he's trying to obtain unapproved medication. Sharon's face went white. No. I'm serious. She shook her head. He wouldn't. Nate's silence said otherwise. Deep down, Sharon knew Nick better than almost anyone. And she also knew what fear could make him do. Particularly when Nikki was involved. I need to find him. Sharon. Now. She grabbed her keys and rushed out the door. Meanwhile, Nick returned home carrying the mysterious package. He placed it on the kitchen counter. For several minutes he simply stared at it. This tiny box represented hope. Or disaster. Possibly both. His phone rang. Victor. Nick ignored it. The phone rang again. And again. Finally he answered. What? Victor's voice exploded through the speaker. What the hell are you doing? Nick froze. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Silence. Victor continued. If you give your mother those drugs, they might save her. They might kill her. Nick clenched his jaw. You don't know that. And neither do you. The truth hurt. Because Victor was right. Nick knew almost nothing about what he'd purchased. Only promises. Only rumors. Only hope. Dangerous hope. Later that night, Sharon arrived at Nick's house. The moment he opened the door, she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. And the package sitting behind him. Her heart sank. Nick. He looked away. Don't. You can't do this. What if it works? What if it doesn't? Nick laughed bitterly. What if doing nothing kills her? Sharon stepped closer. You're scared. No kidding. And because you're scared, you're gambling. I'm fighting. No. Her voice softened. You're falling apart. The word struck harder than she intended. Nick looked shattered. Broken. Lost. For a moment Sharon thought he might actually cry. Instead he turned away. I can't lose her. Sharon's eyes filled with tears. I know. The silence between them became unbearable. Finally Sharon spoke again. If Nikki knew what this was doing to you. Nick closed his eyes. Because Sharon was right. Nikki would never want him risking everything. Not his freedom. Not his future. Not his soul. But the crisis deepened the next morning. A call came from the hospital. Nikki had suffered another setback. Doctors rushed to stabilize her. Victor arrived first. Then Victoria. Then Adam. Then Nick. The family gathered outside Nikki's room, united by fear. For several agonizing hours nobody knew what would happen. Every minute felt endless. Every update felt worse. And throughout it all, Nick carried the secret weight of the illegal medication hidden at home. Part of him wondered if he should tell the doctors. Another part wondered if he should sneak it into Nikki's treatment plan. The thoughts terrified him. Because they sounded increasingly reasonable. And that was exactly the problem. Desperation was changing him. Victor eventually pulled Nick aside. The two men stood alone in a quiet hallway. For once there was no corporate rivalry. No family feud. Only a father trying to save his son from making a terrible mistake. Victor spoke softly. Your mother needs us. Nick nodded. I know. She needs us clear-headed. Nick stared at the floor. I know. Victor's expression softened. You are not responsible for fixing this. Nick looked up. But what if I can? You can't. The answer was immediate. Brutal. Honest. Victor continued. The doctors are fighting for her. They aren't winning. Victor closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. And neither will criminals selling false hope. Nick had no response, because deep down he knew Victor might be right. Unfortunately, the temptation refused to disappear. That evening the supplier contacted Nick again. "I have something stronger." Nick's pulse quickened. "What?" "A second treatment." Nick should have hung up. Instead he listened. Every warning sign. Every red flag. Every instinct. Ignored. Because grief had become louder than reason. The supplier sensed it. Predators always did. And he pushed harder. "If you really love your mother, you'll do whatever it takes." The statement struck like a knife. Nick ended the call. But the damage was done. The guilt. The pressure. The impossible choice. It all continued building. Back at the hospital, Nikki finally regained consciousness. Weak but alert, she looked around the room. Victor sat beside her. Nick stood nearby. Victoria smiled through tears. For one beautiful moment, hope returned. Then Nikki noticed something. Nick looked troubled. Deeply troubled. Sweetheart," Nikki whispered. Nick approached. "Yeah? What's wrong?" His eyes immediately filled with emotion. "Nothing." Nikki smiled faintly. "You were always a terrible liar." Victor watched carefully. So did Victoria. The entire family sensed it. Nick was carrying something heavy. Something dangerous. Something that threatened to derail not only his own recovery from grief and stress but the fragile stability of the entire Newman family. As the week came to a close, Nick stood alone overlooking Genoa City. The illegal medication remained hidden. The supplier continued calling. Nikki's condition remained uncertain. And the pressure continued mounting. One decision. One terrible decision. That was all it would take. Would Nick walk away before it was too late? Or would desperation drive him deeper into a dangerous world of underground medicine and criminal promises? The answer could change everything. Because sometimes the greatest threat isn't illness. It's the choices people make when they are terrified of losing the ones they love. And for Nick Newman, that terrifying crossroads had finally arrived. The road ahead promised heartbreak, shocking confrontations, and consequences that could ripple through Genoa City for months to come. One thing was certain. Nick's recovery from the emotional devastation surrounding Nikki's illness had been derailed in a massive way. And the fallout was only beginning.